I think I didn't do anything wrong, just told the truth about what I needed. When he handed me the envelope with his lawyer's card clipped to the front, I realized he'd stopped asking what I wanted and started acting on what he deserved. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The whole thing started as a joke, really. Elliot was doing that thing he always did, standing at the kitchen counter in his wrinkled work shirt, methodically buttering toast while I tried to get Clara ready for school. 7 years old, and already she had more awareness of the tension in our house than my husband seemed to. "Mummy, why don't you and Daddy talk anymore?" she asked, tugging at her school jumper. Elliot paused mid-butter, glancing at me with those tired brown eyes. At 36, he looked older than his years, his hairline retreating and his shoulders permanently hunched from hunching over computer screens all day. IT work had been good to us financially, but it had made him boring, predictable, safe. "We talk, sweetheart," I said, smoothing Clara's hair. "Daddy and I just have different ways of communicating." Elliot set down his knife with deliberate precision. "Different ways, right." That evening, I met the girls at our usual spot, the gastropub on High Street that did decent wine and better gossip. Sarah, Jenna, and Mel had been my lifeline through the monotony of suburban marriage, and they understood what Elliot never seemed to grasp, that a woman needs excitement, needs to feel desired, needs more than just stability and shared mortgage payments. "Honestly," I said, swirling my Sauvignon Blanc, "sometimes I think if Elliot wants to keep me as his wife, we'd need an open relationship. At least then I'd get some variety in my life." The girls erupted in laughter. Sarah nearly choked on her Prosecco. "Morwenna, you didn't," Jenna gasped. "I'm serious," I continued, emboldened by their reaction. "The man hasn't surprised me once in 8 years of marriage. Yesterday I found him reorganizing our spice rack alphabetically." "Alphabetically? Who does that?" "Someone who cares about organization," Mel suggested weakly, but she was grinning too. "Someone who's given up on passion," I corrected. "I swear, if Noah from work showed half the interest Elliot used to, I'd be tempted to take him up on it." The mention of Noah sent a fresh wave of giggles around the table. They all knew about Noah, 31, charming, with that easy confidence that comes from being genuinely desired by women. He'd been flirting with me for months, and unlike Elliot, he made me feel like I was worth pursuing. When I got home that night, Elliot was waiting in the living room, with Clara's homework spread across the coffee table. "How was dinner?" he asked without looking up. "Fine, the usual." I kicked off my heels and noticed how he tensed when I mentioned it was the usual. "The girls think you're lucky to have me, you know." Elliot's pen stopped moving. "Do they?" "Don't be like that. I was just telling them how different we are. How you're so settled." He finally looked up, and something in his expression made me pause. "Morwenna, do you actually want to be married to me?" The question hung in the air between us. I could have reassured him, could have smoothed things over with a kiss and a deflection. Instead, I laughed. "Of course I do, Elliot. Don't be so insecure." But even as I said it, my phone buzzed with a text from Noah. "Tonight was fun watching you laugh. Coffee tomorrow." I deleted it before Elliot could see, but the thrill of having a secret, of being wanted by someone who didn't take me for granted, was intoxicating. The next morning, Elliot was quieter than usual. He made Clara's lunch with mechanical precision, kissed her goodbye, and barely glanced at me before leaving for work. "Daddy seems sad," Clara observed. "Daddy's just tired from work," I told her, but I was already thinking about Noah's invitation. The office break room had become my sanctuary. It was there, over terrible instant coffee and stale biscuits, that Noah and I had our most intimate conversations. He had a way of listening that made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the world, so different from Elliot's distracted nods and automatic responses. "You deserve better than being taken for granted," Noah said, leaning against the counter with that crooked smile that made my stomach flutter. "A woman like you shouldn't have to beg for attention." "I don't beg," I said quickly. But we both knew it wasn't entirely true. How many times had I tried to initiate romance with Elliot, only to be met with excuses about being tired or stressed about work? "I know you don't," Noah said, moving closer. "That's what makes you so attractive. You know your worth." When his fingers brushed mine as he handed me my coffee, I didn't pull away. The flirtation escalated gradually. Lingering looks across the office, text messages that started professional and drifted into personal territory. The day he suggested we grab lunch together, I said yes without hesitation. Elliot noticed the change immediately. I started taking longer to get ready in the mornings, paying more attention to my appearance. I bought new lingerie, not for him, but because feeling desirable made me feel alive again. "You're different lately," Elliot said one evening, as I checked my phone for the third time during dinner. "Different how?" I asked, not looking up from Noah's latest message. "Distant, like you're somewhere else." "I'm right here," I said, finally putting the phone face down on the table. "Maybe you're just not used to me having a life outside this house." Elliot's jaw tightened. "You've always had a life outside this house. Your job, your friends, your hobbies." "What hobbies?" I laughed. "When do I have time for hobbies? Between work and Clara and managing this household, when exactly am I supposed to develop hobbies?" "You could have hobbies if you wanted them. I've never stopped you from—" "Haven't you?" I stood up, clearing my plate with more force than necessary. "Every time I want to go out with the girls, you make that face. Every time I mention trying something new, you worry about the expense or the time commitment. You want me to be content with your version of happiness, Elliot, and I'm not." That night, he asked to see my phone. I laughed, actually laughed, at the audacity of it. "Are you serious right now? What are you, my father?" "I'm your husband," he said quietly, "and you're acting like you have something to hide." "The only thing I'm hiding is my frustration with how paranoid you've become. This is exactly what I mean about you being controlling." I stormed off to our bedroom, my phone clutched in my hand, and immediately opened my messages with Noah. But when I tried to send him a text about Elliot's behavior, I found that he'd been unresponsive all day. My last 3 messages sat there, unread. A cold feeling settled in my stomach, but I pushed it away. Noah was probably just busy. Men like him always had options, and that was part of what made him exciting. Elliot slept in the guest room that night. When I woke up the next morning, he was already gone, leaving only a note saying he'd taken Clara to school. My mother called while I was getting ready for work. "How are things with Elliot?" Joan asked in that carefully neutral tone that meant she'd already formed an opinion. "He's being difficult," I admitted, "suspicious and controlling. I think he's having some kind of midlife crisis." "Men do that," she said sympathetically. "They get insecure when their wives start coming into their own. You're 34, Morwenna. You're in your prime. It's natural that you'd want more from life." Her validation felt like a warm hug. This was why I'd always been closer to my mother than Elliot's. Joan understood that marriage was supposed to enhance your life, not limit it. I just wish he could see that I need more stimulation, more excitement. I'm not asking for the moon. "Of course you're not, darling. You're asking for what any woman deserves, to feel alive in her own marriage." When I got to work, Noah was waiting by my desk with coffee from the good place down the street. "Thought you might need this," he said with that smile that made everything else fade away. "You have no idea," I said, accepting the cup gratefully. But as the day wore on, I noticed he was more reserved than usual. Our conversation stayed surface level, and when I suggested lunch again, he claimed he had meetings all afternoon. That evening, Elliot was waiting in the kitchen when I got home. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" "About us, about what you want from this marriage." I set down my purse and looked at him, really looked at him. When had he gotten so thin? When had those lines appeared around his eyes? "I want you to trust me," I said finally. "I want you to stop treating me like I'm doing something wrong, just because I'm not content to be your quiet little housewife." "I've never wanted you to be quiet," he said. "I fell in love with you because you were vibrant and passionate and full of life. But lately, It feels like you're saving all of that energy for everyone except me. For a moment, I almost softened, almost told him about Noah, about how lonely I'd been, about how much I missed feeling wanted. But then my phone buzzed, and I saw Elliot's eyes flick to it, saw the suspicion there, and my defensiveness flared back to life. I can't help it if you've stopped putting effort into making me feel desired, I said. Maybe if you paid half as much attention to me as you do to your computer, we wouldn't have this problem. Elliot was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, like he'd made some kind of decision. You're right, he said. I haven't been the husband you deserve. I felt a surge of victory, but it was short-lived. I'll do better, he continued, but I need you to do better too. I need you to be honest with me about what's really going on. Nothing's going on, I said automatically. Elliot studied my face, and I had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through me. Okay, he said finally, if you say so. But something in his tone made me think it wasn't okay at all. The group dinner was supposed to be fun, a chance for Elliot to see me in my element, surrounded by people who appreciated my wit and energy. Instead, it became the night everything started to unravel. We met at the gastropub again, this time with husbands in tow. Sarah brought Marcus, Jenna came with David, and Mel dragged along her boyfriend James. I'd convinced Elliot to join us, thinking that seeing me through my friend's eyes might remind him of what he'd fallen in love with. Noah showed up 20 minutes late, claiming he'd been invited by Sarah, though I suspected he'd heard about it through office gossip. Either way, seeing him walk through the door made my pulse quicken in a way Elliot's presence hadn't in years. Sorry I'm late, Noah said, sliding into the empty chair directly across from me. Traffic was murder. Elliot shifted beside me, and I could feel his tension like a physical thing. But instead of being more careful, I found myself energized by the dynamic. Here was my chance to show Elliot what real charisma looked like. No worries, I said, leaning forward slightly. We were just talking about how boring our husbands have become. The table laughed, except for Elliot and the other husbands, who exchanged uncomfortable glances. Speak for yourself, Sarah said, nudging Marcus playfully. This one still surprises me. Elliot surprised me last week, I said, warming to my theme. He alphabetized our spice rack. I nearly fainted from the excitement. More laughter, louder this time. Noah grinned and shook his head. Alphabetical Spice Organization. That's next-level domestic efficiency, he said. Isn't it just? I agreed. Next he'll be color-coordinating our sock drawer. I might not be able to handle that much spontaneity. Elliot's hand tightened around his beer bottle. I was trying to be helpful, he said quietly. Oh, you were very helpful, I assured him. Now I know exactly where to find the oregano when I need it. Revolutionary. The conversation moved on, but I kept finding ways to bring it back to Elliot's quirks and habits. How he watched the same 3 shows on repeat. How he went to bed at exactly 10:30 every night. How he'd worn the same cologne for 8 years because it works. Noah played along beautifully, asking leading questions that let me elaborate on Elliot's predictability. When I mentioned Elliot's habit of reading computer manuals for fun, Noah nearly spit out his drink. No way. Actual manuals, like for pleasure. Cover to cover, I confirmed. He has opinions about different programming languages the way normal people have opinions about music. That's actually kind of impressive, Noah said, but his tone suggested otherwise. I mean, the dedication is remarkable. Elliot stood up abruptly. I'm going to get some air, he said. Elliot, I started, but he was already walking away. Let him go, Sarah said. Men get weird when we talk about them like they're not there. Maybe we should tone it down a bit, Mel suggested. He looked pretty upset. He'll be fine, I said, but I was watching Noah, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Elliot just doesn't like being the center of attention. When Elliot came back 10 minutes later, he sat down without saying anything. The conversation had moved on to other topics, but the damage was done. He barely spoke for the rest of the evening, just nursed his beer and checked his watch periodically. Noah, meanwhile, seemed to have found his confidence again. He told funny stories about work, complimented my new haircut, and made sure my wine glass never stayed empty. The contrast between his attention and Elliot's withdrawal was stark, and I found myself leaning into it. "You know," I said as we were getting ready to leave, "it's so nice to have actual conversation with someone who appreciates good banter." I was looking at Noah when I said it, and everyone at the table knew it. Elliot stood up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. "I'll get the car," he said, and walked out without waiting for a response. "Yikes," Jenna murmured. "Someone's in the doghouse tonight." "He'll get over it," I said, but I was starting to feel the first prickles of unease. He just needs to learn that marriage doesn't mean I have to pretend he's more interesting than he is. Noah walked me to the parking lot, staying close enough that our arms brushed as we walked. "Thanks for dinner," he said. "It was illuminating." "Illuminating how?" He smiled that crooked smile. "Just seeing you in your natural habitat. You're even more captivating than I thought." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Noah." "I should go," he said, but he didn't move away. "See you Monday?" "Of course." He squeezed my hand briefly before walking to his car, leaving me standing there with my skin tingling and my mind racing. Elliot was waiting in our car with the engine running. The drive home was silent except for the radio, which he'd turned up loud enough to discourage conversation. When we got home, Clara was already asleep, and our babysitter left quickly after sensing the tension between us. Elliot went straight to the guest room without saying goodnight. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room, replaying the evening. Had I been too harsh? Maybe. But Elliot needed to understand that I wasn't going to pretend to be satisfied with mediocrity just to protect his feelings. My phone buzzed with a text from Noah. "Hope I didn't cause any trouble tonight. You looked beautiful as always." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "No trouble. Elliot just needs to grow thicker skin." But even as I sent it, I could hear Elliot moving around in the guest room, and something about the careful quietness of his movements made my stomach twist with an emotion I didn't want to examine too closely. The next morning, Elliot was gone before I woke up. He'd left Clara's breakfast ready and a note saying he'd pick her up from school. No mention of the night before, no indication of when he'd be back. I called my mother while Clara was watching cartoons. "He's being ridiculous," Joan said after I explained what had happened. "You were just having fun with your friends. If he can't handle a little teasing, that's his problem." That's what I thought, but now he's giving me the silent treatment like a child. "Men do that when they feel threatened," she said. "Elliot knows he's not the most exciting man in the world. Instead of stepping up his game, he's trying to make you feel guilty for noticing." Her words were exactly what I needed to hear, but they didn't explain the knot in my stomach or the way Clara kept asking where Daddy was. Elliot's mother called that afternoon. "Morwenna," Helen said without preamble, "I think we need to talk." "About what?" "About how you treated my son last night. Sarah's husband told Marcus what happened, and Marcus told me." My face burned. "I don't know what you think you heard." "I heard that you humiliated Elliot in front of your friends and flirted with another man right in front of him. That's not what happened." "Isn't it?" Helen's voice was sharp. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're trying to justify treating your husband like garbage." I hung up on her, but her words echoed in my head for the rest of the day. When Elliot finally came home that evening, Clara ran to him like she hadn't seen him in weeks. "Daddy, where were you?" "Just at work, sweetheart," he said, lifting her into a hug. "Did you have a good day?" He spoke to Clara for 20 minutes about school and her friends and what she wanted for dinner, but he didn't say a single word to me. That night, I found the guest room door locked. Elliot's withdrawal was calculated and complete. He spoke to me only when necessary, usually about Clara or household logistics. He'd wake up early, make breakfast for our daughter, and leave for work before I came downstairs. In the evenings, he'd help Clara with homework, read her bedtime stories, and then disappear into the guest room with his laptop. At first, I told myself it was a tantrum that would blow over. Elliot had always been conflict-averse, Surely he'd come around once he realized how childish he was being. But days turned into weeks, and his polite distance never wavered. "He's emotionally punishing me," I told the girls over lunch. "It's actually a form of abuse, giving someone the silent treatment like this." "That's awful," Sarah said, but she looked uncomfortable. "Have you tried talking to him?" "How can I talk to someone who won't engage? He's like a robot. He does his dad duties, pays the bills, and acts like I don't exist." What I didn't tell them was how Elliot's withdrawal was affecting Clara. She'd started having nightmares and asking why Mummy and Daddy didn't eat dinner together anymore. When I tried to explain that Daddy was just busy with work, she'd given me a look that was far too knowing for a 7-year-old. "Maybe you should try counseling," Mel suggested carefully. "I'm not the one who needs counseling," I snapped. "I'm not the one who can't handle honest communication in a marriage." The truth was, Elliot's silence was driving me crazy. I'd gotten used to his attention, even when it was negative attention like worry or jealousy. This complete emotional absence was worse than fighting. Noah had become my lifeline. Our coffee breaks stretched longer, our text conversations deeper. He listened to my frustrations about Elliot with the kind of focused attention I'd been craving at home. "You deserve so much better than this," he said one afternoon, as we sat in his car in the office parking lot. "A woman like you shouldn't have to beg for basic emotional connection." "I just don't understand how he can be so cruel," I said, and I meant it. I know I hurt his feelings that night, but this level of punishment is insane. Noah reached over and took my hand. "Maybe he's trying to make you choose." "Choose what?" "Him or your happiness, your marriage or your freedom." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "Some men can't handle being with a woman who knows her own worth." That evening, I confronted Elliot directly. I found him in the kitchen after Clara had gone to bed, methodically loading the dishwasher with the same precision he brought to everything else. "We need to talk," I said. "About what?" He didn't look up from the plates. "About this ridiculous silent treatment you've been giving me. About the fact that you're punishing our daughter because you can't handle adult communication." Elliot's hand stilled on the dishware. "I'm punishing Clara. You're creating a hostile environment in this house. She's having nightmares, Elliot. She keeps asking me what she did wrong." Finally, he looked at me. "What she did wrong?" "She thinks it's her fault that Mummy and Daddy don't talk anymore." Elliot closed the dishwasher and turned to face me fully. "And what do you tell her?" "I tell her that sometimes grown-ups go through difficult periods, but that we both love her very much." "Do we?" The question caught me off guard. "Do we what?" "Both love her very much, because from where I'm standing, it seems like one of us is willing to blow up her family for the sake of excitement." My face flamed. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Elliot leaned against the counter, and I noticed how thin he'd gotten. "Tell me, Morwenna, what exactly do you think has been happening these past few weeks?" "You've been sulking because I hurt your precious ego." "I've been watching my wife have an affair." The words hung in the air between us like a physical blow. My mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "I'm not stupid," Elliot continued quietly. "The late nights, the secret phone calls, the way you light up when you talk about your co-worker Noah, the way you've been treating me like I'm some kind of burden you can't wait to be rid of." "I'm not having an affair," I managed, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. "No? What would you call it then?" "I have a friend who actually listens to me and makes me feel like I matter. A friend you text at midnight, a friend you meet in parking lots, a friend you flirt with in front of our mutual acquaintances while humiliating your husband." How did he know about the parking lot? Had he been following me? "You're spying on me," I said, latching onto my outrage. "You're actually stalking your own wife because you can't handle the fact that I have a life outside this house." Elliot pulled out his phone and started scrolling through something. "Noah Vale, 31, works in marketing at your company. Drives a blue Honda Civic, license plate." He rattled off the number. "Divorced last year, no kids. Has a reputation for dating married women." My blood turned to ice. "How do you know all that?" "Because unlike you, Morwenna, when I commit to something, I take it seriously." including protecting my family. Protecting your family? From what? From someone who's willing to destroy it for a cheap thrill. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was being paranoid and controlling, but something in his calm delivery stopped me. This wasn't the Elliot I knew, the Elliot who avoided conflict and apologized for taking up space. This Elliot was someone else entirely. I want you to stop seeing him, he said. You can't tell me who I can and can't be friends with. I'm not telling you. I'm asking you, as your husband and the father of your child, to end whatever this is before it goes any further. And if I don't... Elliot was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was memorizing it. Then I guess we'll both know where we stand, he said finally. That night I called my mother. He's trying to control me, I told her. He's making these crazy accusations and demanding I stop talking to Noah. What kind of accusations? Joan asked carefully. He thinks I'm having an affair, which is ridiculous. Noah and I are friends. We talk, we have coffee sometimes. Elliot's just jealous because Noah actually pays attention to me. Sweetheart, my mother said slowly, are you sure that's all it is? The question felt like a betrayal. Of course I'm sure. I would never cheat on Elliot. I might not be happy in my marriage, but I'm not a cheater. But even as I said it, I thought about Noah's hand on mine, about the way my heart raced when he texted, about how I'd started wearing his favorite color and timing my breaks to coincide with his. Maybe Elliot's just scared of losing you, Joan suggested. Maybe this is his way of trying to fight for your marriage. By threatening me, by spying on me, by setting boundaries. There's a difference, Morwenna. After I hung up, I sat in the dark living room, staring at my phone. Noah had sent 3 texts over the course of the evening, but for the first time in weeks, I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I found myself thinking about Clara, about the way she'd started flinching when Elliot and I were in the same room, about how she'd asked me the night before if we were going to get divorced, like her friend Emma's parents. I don't know, sweetheart, I told her honestly. I hope not. But sitting there in the dark, listening to Elliot moving around upstairs, I wondered if hope was enough. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, while I was getting ready for work. Please be home at 7 p.m. for a conversation. Elliot. No warmth, no explanation, just a formal summons that made my stomach clench with anxiety. I'd been expecting this, some kind of ultimatum or emotional breakdown, where Elliot would beg me to choose our marriage over my friendship with Noah. I spent the day preparing my defense. Elliot was being unreasonable, controlling, and paranoid. I had every right to have friends, to seek emotional connection outside our marriage when he'd failed to provide it. If he wanted to save our relationship, he needed to look at his own shortcomings instead of trying to control mine. Noah noticed my distraction during our usual coffee break. You seem tense, he said, sliding into the chair across from me. Elliot wants to have some kind of serious talk tonight. I think he's going to try to give me an ultimatum about us. Noah's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. What kind of ultimatum? The usual controlling husband nonsense. Stop seeing you, stop having friends he doesn't approve of, become his perfect little housewife. And what are you going to tell him? I looked at Noah expectantly, waiting for him to say something about fighting for us, about not letting Elliot dictate my choices. Instead, he seemed to be studying his coffee cup with unusual intensity. I'll tell him the truth, I said finally, that he can't control who I'm friends with. Noah nodded slowly, but something in his demeanor had changed. Maybe we should be more careful for a while, until things settle down. Careful how? Just discreet. I don't want to cause problems in your marriage. The words hit me like a slap. You don't want to cause problems? Noah, you've been telling me for months that I deserve better, that Elliot doesn't appreciate me. Now you're worried about causing problems. I care about you more, Morwenna. That's why I think maybe we should take a step back. I stared at him across the small table, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. The charming smile looked calculating now. The easy confidence seemed shallow. He was backing away the moment things got complicated, leaving me to face the consequences alone. I see, I said quietly. It's not that I don't. No, I understand perfectly. I stood up, gathering my things. Thanks for making your position clear. I left him sitting there and spent the rest of the day alternating between fury and humiliation. By the time I got home, I was ready for a fight. Elliot was waiting in the living room with a manila folder on the coffee table and his laptop open beside it. He looked up when I came in, and I was struck again by how much weight he'd lost, how much older he looked. "Thank you for being on time," he said formally. "Let's just get this over with," I said, sitting down across from him. "Whatever ultimatum you want to deliver, whatever threats you want to make about Noah—" "I'm not here to make threats," Elliot interrupted. "I'm here to show you something." He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. The first one was a printout of text messages. My text messages with Noah, dating back months. My blood turned to ice as I saw our conversations laid out in black and white, including messages I'd thought I'd deleted. "How did you—" "Your phone backs up to our shared cloud account," Elliot said calmly. "You never changed the settings after we set up the family plan." The messages looked worse in print than they had felt in the moment. Complaints about Elliot, flirtations with Noah, plans to meet that I'd hidden from my husband. The progression from innocent friendship to emotional affair was undeniable when viewed chronologically. "This is a violation of my privacy," I said, but my voice sounded weak. "Is it?" Elliot pulled out another sheet. "This is our phone bill. 47 calls to Noah's number in the past month, most of them lasting over an hour, some of them at midnight or later." He set down another paper. "Credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and coffee shops where you told me you were running errands or working late." Another sheet. "Your work parking garage has security cameras. These are timestamps showing your car and Noah's car in the garage together, sometimes for hours, on days when you told me you were in meetings." Each piece of evidence felt like a physical blow. Elliot's voice remained calm and factual as he laid out the case against me, but I could see the pain in his eyes. "Elliot, I can explain." "Can you?" He pulled out his phone. "Because I have Noah on speakerphone and I'd love to hear your explanation." My heart stopped. "What?" "I called him this afternoon. Had a very interesting conversation about his intentions toward my wife." Elliot pressed a button, and Noah's voice filled the room. "Look, man, I never meant for things to go this far. Morwenna came on to me, and I thought she was separated or something. When I found out she was still married and living with you, I tried to back off. I don't want any trouble." The recording continued with Noah essentially throwing me under the bus, claiming I'd pursued him, that I'd told him my marriage was over, that he'd tried to discourage my interest when he realized the situation was more complicated than I'd led him to believe. "Turn it off," I whispered. Elliot stopped the recording and looked at me with something that might have been pity. "I loved you," he said quietly. "For 8 years, I loved you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. I thought we were building something together. No, we weren't. You were building an exit strategy while I was building a life." He pulled out the last set of papers from the folder. "These are divorce papers. I've already filed them. I'm asking for joint custody of Clara and an equitable division of assets." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Elliot, you can't be serious. We can work through this. We can go to counseling." "I tried counseling. I suggested it 6 months ago, and you said we didn't need outside help. I tried talking to you, and you told me I was being controlling. I tried giving you space, and you used it to have an affair." "It wasn't an affair. Noah and I never what? Never kissed, never touched, never made plans to leave me for him." Elliot's calm facade cracked slightly. "Because according to these messages, you did all of those things." I looked down at the papers again, seeing my own words reflected back at me. Messages to Noah about how unhappy I was, how Elliot didn't understand me, how I wished I could start over with someone who appreciated me. Plans to meet him for dinner, for drinks, for long drives where we could talk without interruption. "I was confused," I said desperately. "I was lonely and confused, but I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did hurt me. You hurt Clara. You hurt our families. And you did it all while telling yourself you were the victim. Elliot closed the laptop and gathered the papers back into the folder. I'm moving out tonight, he said. I've already packed my things. Clara will stay here with you for now, but we'll work out a custody schedule through our lawyers. Our lawyers? Elliot, this is insane. We don't need lawyers. We can figure this out ourselves. No, we can't. Because I can't trust you to tell the truth, and you can't admit what you've done. He stood up, folder in hand. My lawyer will be in touch about the custody arrangement and property division. What am I supposed to tell Clara? Elliot paused at the doorway. Tell her the truth. Tell her that sometimes people make choices that hurt the people they're supposed to love most, and that sometimes those choices have consequences that can't be undone. Elliot, please. But he was already walking up the stairs to get his suitcase. 20 minutes later, I watched from the living room window as he loaded his car and drove away, leaving me alone in the house we'd bought together, surrounded by the evidence of my betrayal. Clara cried herself to sleep that night, asking over and over why Daddy had left. I held her and made promises I wasn't sure I could keep, telling her that Daddy still loved her, that this wasn't her fault, that everything would be okay. But as I lay awake in our empty bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying Elliot's calm recitation of my failures, I wondered if anything would ever be okay again. The divorce moved with cold precision, like a machine dismantling my life. Elliot's lawyer, Patricia Chen, was sharp and composed. Mine was already defeated by the stack of evidence against me. Texts, financial records, photos, all meticulously documented. The custody evaluation was worse. The psychologist asked why I'd told Clara her father was mean, and why I'd asked her where she wanted to live. My excuses sounded small, pathetic. Elliot, calm and steady, came off as the devoted parent. By the final hearing, I knew the outcome before the judge spoke. Joint custody, but with supervised exchanges and mandatory co-parenting counseling. The house sold, assets divided, 8 years reduced to paperwork. Outside, Elliot's mother told me she hoped my happiness had been worth destroying a family. Clara hugged me, confused and fragile, asking why Daddy and I couldn't live together. I lied and said everything would be okay. Months later, I live alone in a small flat, seeing Clara every other week. She's quieter now, careful with her words. I can tell she's learned that love isn't permanent. I used to think I needed excitement. Now I understand I already had something better: stability, love, a family that trusted me. I opened the door to something I thought I wanted, and Elliot walked through it, taking everything real with him. The door's closed now. I'm the one left on the wrong side. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.